Buddy, thanks for doing this. It's been a long time coming after one aborted effort due to bad weather. Yeah, bad weather. Who knew in modern technology? Buddy, I've
Yeah.
got to say, someone just sent me something, right? And it was about all the world champions that there are and all the different titles and all the rest of it. And you heard all that BS for years. But if anyone would have benefited from having more world titles back in the day, it would have been you, right? Because you were the guy who was Mr. Patient for so long.
Yes.
Is that any source of regret for you, the fact that things have changed, or did you like
Nah,
it?
not at all, because they have all these other champions, and some people say they're doing it because it's more money. Okay, but then when they get tested, then it's like, okay, I'd rather be a champion in my era when there was only two or three champions, and now when you got five or six in one weight class. Don't make sense. You know what I mean? You have the regular champion, you have the interim, regular, then the champ, then the super champ. I mean, just too many damn champs.
It's interesting you say that, actually, buddy, and that means that we're going to leap forward a little bit because you've always had this old school mentality. Is there anywhere that can you pinpoint where you get the old school elements from your mindset from?
Oh, from the era I came up in, man. I've been blessed. I've had the opportunity to hang around with some of the greatest fighters and some of the greatest trainers who had that mentality and who didn't tolerate no BS. They didn't give a damn who you were. If it was either their way or the doorway. You know what I mean? When you walked in, you left your problems at the door, and then you picked them up when you left. Or when you walked in that gym, you were theirs. And it was all about respect. We respected the older trainers back then, the older fighters. We respected them. Today, a lot of these guys today don't respect the old trainers. You
Yeah.
know, I was in Richard Steele's gym one day. God bless Eddie Futch. And I talked to Eddie Futch for like 2 hours. When I got done talking to him, a couple of the trainers says, "Why are you wasting your time talking to that old man?" I'm like, "Are you guys stupid? I mean, what he forgot, you guys haven't learned yet." And then Eddie Futch died a week later.
Yeah, that's a priceless education. And one of the other guys that you lost along the way is obviously Al Serto. And I showed you that clipping that I dug out yesterday. So Al the was all about the old school, wasn't he?
Oh man, he was old school before old school.
And he was a tailor by trade, wasn't he? Right.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I remember reading this years and years ago, but you would hang out in the tailors and just watch and learn as people came and went and fighters came and went. And so some of the guys that you became friendly with back then, Jersey Joe Walcott, Jake LaMotta, Willie Pep, you learned from these guys. And in fact, Al would say everything that they told him went in one ear and stayed in there.
Yeah. They used to come watch me train. And I thought it was an honor for these guys to go out of their way to come watch me train. There's a guy named Charlie Fusari who fought Sugar Ray Robinson. And I met him when I was 18 years old in Hoboken at the gym. And he used to come once a week to watch me spar. Then I met Willie Pep. He used to come from Connecticut once a week. And Jersey Joe Walcott used to come from Camden, New Jersey. He used to have his son driving down once a week to watch me train. So to me, it was like an honor to have these guys, at that age that they were at, come watch me train.
And am I right in thinking Joey Giardello, who I interviewed near the end of his life, but Joey was one of the guys as well?
Joey was there more than anybody because, Joey him and Al were really close, Joey. And his favorite word was jerk off. Hey, you jerk off.
Oh, great. He took me out to dinner once in Cherry Hill many years ago.
Did he make you pay the check?
No, do you know what? He brought another English guy called Peter Green and he made him pay.
Okay.
But no, that's interesting. So we hear a lot about places in New York and fighters coming up, obviously like Iron Barkley and from the Bronx and Tyson from Brownsville. But we don't know loads about Brentwood. What's Brentwood? What's that like?
Brentwood is to me, I would say, I mean, listen, New York itself, to me, to grow up in New York in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s was the greatest learning experience you can ever have. You know, Frank Sinatra said it best. If you can live there, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. You know, my neighborhood, you know, it was a mixture of everybody, black, white, yellow, green, purple, you know what I mean? And everyone got along. I mean, you had your little trouble here and there. You know, you had the drug scene, you had the heroin was really bad in the 70s in Brentwood. The heroin was real bad, real bad. I mean, I had a brother who became a heroin addict at 17. You know what I mean? The drugs was really bad in Brentwood. But I gotta say this though, if you was young and doing something or trying to do something with your life, those same guys that were high on heroin, that were drinking, gambling, selling drugs, they would make you get off the corner and go home.
Okay.
Any young kid that had any type of potential, we call them old heads. Them old heads would say, "Yo, get your ass off this corner." There was a corner of a store called the La Placita, and it's still there. And everybody hung out at the La Placita. The pimps, the hoes, the drug dealers, the hustlers. Everybody hung out in the La Placita parking lot. But if me and my friends were there, the old heads would be like, "Hey, you guys got to get out of here. You don't belong here." You know what I mean? And we would leave. We had no choice because if we didn't leave, they would tell our parents. You know what I mean? So they always looked out for the older generation always looked out for the younger generation.
You mentioned Sinatra there. He was obviously a big boxing fan. He used to go to the shop as well. Did you ever meet him? He used to
I
go.
never met him. I never met Frank Sinatra. I never had that. I met a guy named Jimmy Roselli. I never met Frank Sinatra.
But I'm right in thinking Al did a suit for Sinatra or did several suits for Sinatra.
He probably did it. Only the problem is, did they fit? Everybody used to say, if I was certain way, your suit did it fit.
um, you mentioned obviously Brentwood there and the backdrop. Were you a good kid or did you have your fair share of scrapes and get into trouble?
Well, you know, I mean, I never got in no big trouble because I was scared. You know what I mean? My mom would kick my butt. You know what I mean? And you know, I mean, you know, we did a little mischievous thing as kids, throw rocks at cars, steal a candy bar here and there. You know, but nothing drastic because I had older brothers, and I was scared of my mother. Man, I'm just gonna give it. I was scared of my mom because if you did anything in the neighborhood, by the time you got home, your mother found out already. And when you got home, my mother didn't want to hear no explaining. Just pull on your pants and get ready to get your ass whooped. Yeah, there was no talking. You did it. Pull on. I'm like, Ma, if I told my mother the person was lying, my mother would say, okay, well, let's go to her house. And I want you to tell me in front of her that she's lying. I'm like, shit. I mean, there's nothing I could do, man, but take that ass whooping, you know?
And you were one of eight, is that right?
No, 6.
One of six. Where
One
were
of
you?
6.
Where were you in the pecking order?
4. It was 5 boys, 1 girl. I was the 4th kid. And after me, my mom had twin boys, but they passed away. And then my younger brother, my younger sister.
Was your dad on the scene?
My dad wasn't there, but he was there. You know, like my mom and dad were together till I was like 7 or 8. And they split up. But my dad lived 5 miles away from us.
Okay.
But he hung out when he got out of work, he hung out at a place right around the corner. So like if we did something we had no business doing, I gotta picture this. It's a taxi stand, you know, where you call a cab company. Inside the cab company, they played dice, they gambled, they drank, they hung out. And that's where my dad would be every day after work because he used to love to gamble. So if I got in trouble, when I got off from school, my mother would call the cab company and actually speak to my dad. They put my dad on the phone, and my mom said, you know, Bud got in trouble in school. And my father says, well, I'll be by in a little while to kick your ass. I'd be like, oh my God. So, you know, it was a 2-minute drive. And then he'd come to the house before he went home. And if I needed a butt whooping, I got my butt whooping, then he'd go home.
So you said Bud, he was Big Bud, you were Little Bud.
Yeah, Littlewood, yes. And I used to spend me and my younger brother, my younger sister, we used to stay with him every weekend. Like every Friday, like clockwork, he'd pick us up.
Did you so how did you first go to the gym? How did that come about? Which gym was it?
In my neighborhood is a place called the Brentwood Recreation Center. And in the Brentwood Recreation Center, they had activities for kids, basketball, volleyball, weightlifting, and some of the best basketball players that never made to the NBA played in that gym. You know what I mean? I saw some guys in there, man, that were just unbelievable basketball players. But anywho, downstairs they had a weightlifting, then they had boxing, but the boxing was for professionals only. So I used to sit there and watch the guys box because it was in the same room as the weightlifting. So a friend of mine asked the guy, his name was Gene Moore. They said, "Hey, when are you gonna have boxing for kids?" And the guy says, "Next week, January 17th, but you got to be 12 years old." So my friend said, "You heard that?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's my 12th birthday, January 17th." And the guy says, "Well, come on in at 11 o'clock and join." And I did. And I had my first fight February 21st, 1976, a month later.
Were you good from the start?
Yeah, the guy, Gene Moore, took a real good liking to me right from the beginning. He sounds a natural. But I knew I had a ways to go, of course. But within a month, I was the only kid there. A lot of the kids dropped out.
Was that why did they drop out? Was that just to do with the temptations of the streets and the age and finding girls and stuff?
That I really can't answer. You know what I mean? But then they stopped the boxing program for a while, and then a couple other people took it over, and then I went back, and for like 2 years, and then I went to a guy told me about this place called the Suffolk County PAL, which was in Babylon. And the boxing was under downstairs of the police department, and the guy said, I can't, that's too far. And they said, no, we have a van, we'll pick you up. And the guy should drive the van. His name was Lou Carvella. He would drive the van, pick us up, take us to the gym. After the gym, bring me back home. It was like a 15, 20-minute drive. And he did that every day for me.
And then in my research, it says that you were 54-9 as an amateur. Is that about right?
Yes.
Who did you box? Anyone who went on to achieve big things in the pros?
No. Not off the top of my head, no. No. No, I can tell you no. No.
And then I also understand that you sort of fast track turning pro because your girlfriend was pregnant and you need to get money. Is that right?
Yes.
What was the apart from a cash grab? What was the general thinking about money? Was it one fight at a time, or were you thinking I'm going to be a world champion and I'll make good money?
Both. But I thought I was going to make good money out the gate. You know what I mean? I thought once I started out, I was going to make a lot of money. But so my first pro fight, I made $200. And I thought that was a lot of money. That was my first pro fight was on a Tuesday. Thursday, that 200 was gone.
What? Where did it go? Do you remember?
Yeah, my mom told me to stock up on Pampers.
And at what point did Al get involved with you, or vice versa?
After that fight, because the guy that I fought was Al Serto's fighter.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, but that night there was a guy named Dominic Amorosa who had 5 guys fight, and 4 won and 1 had a draw, and the draw was against me. So my manager Stewie said to me, I want that old man to train you. So we drove to Jersey and met with the old man, and the old man, Dominic, says, well, I've been more than happy to train you, kid, but you got to come to me. I'm not going to Long Island. You got to come here. So Stewie says, is that what you want to do? I said, if that's what I need to do, I'll do it. So I used to travel. I was a senior in high school, so my teacher would let me out of class early to catch the train. So it would take me 3 hours to get to the gym. Then I'll train, then another 3 hours back home.
Wow.
I did that for 6 years.
Gee, so 6 hours total. 3 there,
Yes.
3 back. Wow, that's crazy. Who else?
Yes.
Who else was in the gym with you back then?
At that time, when I went to the gym, the big name was Nino Gonzalez. He had just fought Roberto Duran. So Nino was like the big name, you know. Then there was a guy, Ramon Ranquello, who had beat Mike Rossman. So those were the two big names in the gym. But there was unbelievable talent in the gym. Now that's a gym where 90% of the fighters got lost in the streets. But I've never seen guys. I mean, that was my first time in the gym with guys with so much talent. That I was unbelievable. I was like, holy shit. This is because I was used to dealing with like amateur gyms. And I went into this gym on a Saturday, I was like, damn. It was like, and the guy Dominic, he didn't ask how much you weighed or the other guy weighed. He just said, get dressed, you're boxing. And you never question who you were sparring. You just got dressed and you went in there, and sometimes it was a lightweight, and sometimes it was a middleweight or a light heavyweight. I used to be like, shit, it's got to be a better way.
You mentioned that debut, by the way, and obviously, you went on to achieve great things, but you drew your debut. Like, how does that affect your mindset? Was it a blip, or was it just a hard fight? Was it,
It was a tough. It was a tough fight. I mean, I don't remember anything after the first round. You know what I mean? I just got in the zone. You know what I mean? And it was different. I'm like, damn, I'm going 4 rounds instead of 3. So, I mean, it was just, and I was fought a guy like he was like 6-0, 4-0, something like that. So, I went in there, I'm like, shit, I need these $200. So, and it was in the Embassy Hall in North Bergen, New Jersey. I'll never forget. And, I mean, I fought my ass off. And a lot of the guys who I wind up training with gave me props. They're like, yo, kid, you're going to be a champion, man.
That's very encouraging after a draw, and it sounds like a very tough baptism for you, like in terms of going to a high pros, having a hard first fight. Like it's a pattern. You didn't have anything easy. One thing I saw is that when you fought Ricky Young at the Garden, you did so on the Mike Tyson Mitch Greenbill. Did you know both those guys?
Oh yeah. I knew Mike and I knew Mitch. But I knew Mike was going to beat him. I knew he wasn't going to knock him out. I knew he'd beat him. And that was like a big event for me because it was a big press conference, with Don King and Mitch Green took off his shirt at the weigh-in. I mean, at the press conference. It was just a crazy press conference, and I enjoyed it. I was like, damn, I'm a part of this. Wow, this is fun.
Have you got any crazy Mitch Green stories?
I became good friends with Mitch after that. And one day we was in Gleason's gym, and he was hitting a heavy bag, and this guy kept busting his chops. Because Mitch was training to fight Bone Crusher Smith. And Bone Crusher Smith, Don King pulled Mitch away, not to fight Bone Crusher. Bone Crusher fought Tim Witherspoon. And this guy kept busting his chops in the gym. Mitch said, I'm going to my locker. And when Mitch went to his locker, the gym cleared out.
What did Mitch come back with?
His bag gloves. Nothing. I was sitting in the gym. I'm like, I ain't going no damn where, man. He ain't going to shoot nobody. And then ever since then, we he just said, Shorty, well, yeah, I said, man, come on, Mitch. I mean, you going to shoot somebody in front of everybody in this gym? And, after that, we became good friends, and Mitch is a good guy, man.
And I see that your paths with Mike crossed loads of times over the years, but one time I saw that you were in the running to train him for Clifford Etienne, but you actually wound up training Clifford Etienne to fight Tyson.
What happened, it's crazy. And I get a call from Les Bonanno, who's a great friend of mine. And he goes, I want you to train my guy, bud. I said, all right. So they come down. We shake hands. I said, well, who's Etienne fighting? They said, we don't know yet. So I shake his hand, and bam, everything is cool. 3 days later, Shelly Finkel calls me. I want you to fight Tyson. So I go to Vegas. Train Tyson. So I go to Vegas, and we're talking. I'm like, well, who are you fighting? They said, the Black Rhino. I said, there's a problem. So everybody's like, what do you mean there's a problem? I said, I made a deal with him a few days ago. I shook his hand to be his trainer. They said, so? I said, I can't go back on my word. And Mike says, I respect that, buddy. Because I really respect that. I said, I can't go back on my word, man. Okay, I know it's Mike Tyson. I know it's more money, but I give the man my word. Les is a good friend of mine. I can't, it wouldn't be right.
Sure.
And, it was funny, though, because they came down. A few of Tyson's bodyguards came down like, look, man, you got to train Mike for this. I said, look, I can't do it, man. I love Mike, but I can't do it. And after the fight, Mike gave me a hug and said, yo, I respect what you did. But I knew it was going to be a short night. When during the introductions, you ever seen the cartoons where you see the spirit leaves the cartoon character's body? Yeah. When they was introducing them, I looked at the Black Rhino. I just saw his spirit go up.
I thought the Black Rhino turned white.
He turned green and purple. I was like, so I looked at my wife. I said, don't sit down. Don't get comfortable.
Oh, geez. A couple of fights after you beat Ricky Young, you lost your unbeaten record to Frankie Warren. What do you remember of how you felt losing for the first time? Because you built up a good running weight.
To be honest, after the fight, the arena was about a mile from the hotel. We come out the arena and everybody's getting in the limo, and I said, I'm going to walk. And my manager and everybody's like, what? I said, I'm going to walk. By myself. I don't want nobody to walk with me. I'm going to go by myself. I walked by myself to the hotel. And when I got to the hotel, my manager was standing outside waiting. And I said, look, I want to fight. Give me a fight. And he's like, what? I said, give me a fight. I said, I'm going to go home for a couple of weeks. I want to fight again. I says, I realized what I did wrong in this fight. I'm going to put it behind me and move on. That was in July, and I fought in September. I fought Sal Manby.
Yeah, just in terms of Frankie Warren, you said that he was on you so tight, it was like he was breastfeeding from his mother.
Hello.
But yeah, going on to Sal Manby, probably one of the most underrated guys from the era. It's a tough fight to come back with just a couple of months after.
It's funny, Randy Gordon, who's a dear friend of mine, called me because he was commentating the fight, and he said, buddy, why would you take a fight like this? I said, Randy, I'm going to beat him. He goes, well, so he goes, well, he says, I don't think so, buddy. He goes, I love you, but I don't think you're going to beat him. So I said, okay, I see after the fight.
Should we just let that buzz off?
Yeah.
I'll remind you where we're at. We'll get that. Oh, it sounds persistent.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so obviously Sal Manby was a hard fight to come back from. Probably one of the most underrated guys in that era.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Smart. It was just that fight. The fight with him made me a better fighter.
Did you have reservations about coming back at that level? Because normally after a defeat, obviously you go back, rebuild, take a couple of easier steps.
I think I needed something like that. The fight that I needed. To fight someone that was only going to give me 2 or 3 rounds, I don't think it would have benefited me in the long run.
Goes back to your old school mentality, but you kept winning and you managed to get your revenge over Frankie. Not only did you get revenge, but you went to Corpus Christi and did it.
Well, I lost the first time. You know, I mean, they put me in the same hotel room, rented me the same car. You know, the little Duvin was trying to do everything, but I'm like, I don't give a damn what you do. It ain't gonna happen today. I mean, not Sunday. It might happen during the week, but Sunday, where it counts, I'm gonna come out on top.
Afterwards, it said you were due to you were due to fight Meldrick Taylor, but then it was postponed, and in came Howard Davis. You were the first man to stop him, and you stopped him in one. I mean, what? That's a big win to stop Howard Davis in a round. He's a world class fighter.
You know, it's funny. I had boxed Howard Davis when I was 17 years old, and the speed was just. He was paying me like 500 a week, so I'm like 500 a week. I'm like, I'll go get it. I mean, my car that I was driving to go train him in, I only paid $100 for, so I'm getting 500 a week. I could buy five cars like this.
You could leave one at the gym and drive another one.
Right. But it was a great experience for me sparring with him. It was a great experience. I was only 17. I was a junior in high school, and it was a great experience for me.
Why didn't Howard deliver in the pros the way people thought he might?
You know, I really, really can't say because he's had such great fights in the pros. I mean, he was that close to beating Edwin Rosario till he got knocked down in the last round. He lost by a point. I mean, he had a fight against a kid named Larry Stanton, which was a freaking war. He fought a guy named Stormin Norman Goins, who dropped Howard Davis hard twice. And Howard Davis came back and unbelievable, man. It was just the talent he had was just unfreaking believable.
Did you think when you faced him that you could finish him early? Because one round win over him is an outstanding result.
I didn't think early. I thought late because he was up there in age, and it was like 120 in the ring. It was July. It was hot outside. Then we had the TV lights. So I said, he's not going to be able to take this heat for a long period of time.
You were fighting so often, and that'll be a common theme, I think, that we'll keep coming back to, but you faced an unbeaten Meldrick. How good was the version of Meldrick that you faced, who was, I think, 19-0-1 at the time?
If you want to know the truth, I couldn't tell you. I don't remember anything from the fight.
Really?
Yes, I could not tell you.
Afterwards, you fired your trainer, Hector Roca.
You know what happened? Him and Al had a big falling out. It wasn't me. Him and Al had a big fight. And he just said, look, kid, he goes, I'm out of here.
And who did you go with after that?
Well, Al took over, but basically, there was no the truth. I taught myself after that. I took what Hector gave me and what the old timers gave me, put it together, and basically, realistically, all Al did was get me in shape. Everything else I did on my own.
After Meldrick, there was talk of Taylor fighting Chavez then. You wouldn't obviously fight Chavez, but that was a fight that you always wanted, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
I'm reading some press clippings. There were times in your career where it said that that's basically the only logical fight. You cleaned up at 147, and we'll get to that. And Chavez was no longer able to make 140. You were both with Don King at the time.
No, I wasn't with Don King.
He said he had 5 options on you, so maybe you weren't with me. Is that right?
He did have 5 options, but he didn't want to use them.
Okay.
I mean, let me rephrase that. The opponents that he threw at not even gonna say the opponents. The money he threw at my manager for those opponents, my manager was like, hell no.
Chavez, is that the one that got away for you in terms of who you wanted to fight?
Yeah.
What is speculate? Dream fight for us. What would have happened? How would the fight have gone? What would you?
I would have beat him. I know how to beat him. He didn't like boxers. I mean, if you could box, I mean, but and I could punch as well at 47. Yeah. So I just think I would have took him to school. It wouldn't have been easy, but I think I'd have taken him to school.
How would you describe his 2 fighters with Meldrick?
I mean, just too much. He had too many guns for Meldrick. The Meldrick wasn't a hard puncher. So once Chavez saw that, he just walked right through his stuff.
That first fight, what's your opinion on the stoppage?
I think that just in the heat of battle, Richard still did what he thought was best. You know, it's a tough call either way. You know, suppose he doesn't stop it and there's 40 seconds left in the round instead of 10 seconds. You know what I mean? I mean, he had taken a serious beating to the body. You know, what a lot of people don't understand is the referee sees shit we don't see. And Richard said, buddy, each round, Meldrick was slowing down and Chavez was stepping on the gas. So when you got a guy slowing down, another guy stepping on the gas, and you sitting there watching those body shots, and you're watching the guy spit up blood, you know, anything can happen, man.
Yes, one of those, a second too early is better than a second too late.
There you go.
Through 1989 and onwards, you beat some really solid fighters, and you're fighting almost once a month. You know, people like Edwin Curette, Tony Baltazar, Gary Jacobs, who British fans will know, Joe Manley. Like, these are really good fighters, and you're getting rid of them almost every month or 6 weeks.
Well, I believe in staying busy. I mean, you know, out of sight, out of mind. So if you're staying busy and you got your name out there in the press, it can't help but come to you eventually.
But now, when you look at what's going on today and today's fighting, that run of fights is insanity. It will never happen again, will it?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't see these guys. I don't see anybody today that's really wanting to be active. I mean, I'm not saying there's no one out there, because I'm quite sure there is, but very few, because they take off and they make it a ton of money. They're like, you know what, I'll wait 5 or 6 months. I couldn't wait 5 or 6 months. I don't care how much money I was making. I couldn't wait 5 or 6 months.
What was Gary Jacobs like?
You know, when I got that fight with Gary, I took the fight on a week's notice. I mean, I just went to training camp that Saturday, and my manager called me Saturday night. I came from the movies, and he goes, hey, they got a break in the card next week. I said, okay, what's up? He goes, there's a kid named Gary Jacobs. I said, yeah, I read about him in the paper today. The New York Post, I just did a story on him that day. I said, I read about him in the paper today. I said, well, what about him? They says, well, they're looking for somebody to fight him. I says, all right, I said, I'll tell you what you do. Make the contract at 148. This is on a Saturday night. I said, make the contract 148, and I'll see you in the gym tomorrow. So my manager was like, what? I said, I'll see you in the gym tomorrow. I was like, are you crazy? I said, we will spar every day until Friday. And I'll be ready for him next week.
I suppose you had this mentality where, obviously, where you're fighting so often, kind of like Joey Giordano told me, he didn't train much because he was always fighting. With you fighting so regularly, you're always good to go.
Exactly. Just need a good week, and I got the weekend, and I won the fight.
All the while, though, is it around this time that you're having issues with your left arm and you've got some shoulder, but like bicep tendon issues?
That happened after that. That happened in 1990.
Okay. I mean, I can't get over the activity, particularly obviously in the era where we're at now. But while you were patiently waiting for another shot, you basically you went 16-0 over 3 years.
Yes, and I got an injury that kept me out for almost 9 months.
Did you always think that other shot was going to come?
Yeah. I knew. I'm just a believer that everything happens for a reason, so I knew it was going to come.
For people who don't know about the injury, just tell us about how it affected you, because it went on and on and on, didn't it? Even when you were fighting, it was hurting.
Yes. I mean, the bicep tendon ruptured from the bone. And then I came back. Let's see, that was in July, August, September, October, November. 5 months later, I came back. And I think that eventually it took its toll, the wear and tear on that. I mean, not wear and tear, but improvising. No, not improvising. What word am I looking for?
Just not allowing it to rest.
Right. You know, damn, I can't think of the word right now, but I can't think of it. Anyway, it took its toll eventually on my rotator cuff.
And then when you did get your shot, it came against Simon Brown, who'd beaten Maurice Blocker. What did you think of Simon Brown? I mean, many people not only said that you were the underdog, but that people were saying he was pound for pound. Certainly that he was the best at
Well,
147.
he definitely was the man. But I just knew in my mind that he couldn't outsmart me. You might be bigger, stronger, but you're not smarter. You're not gonna outsmart me.
So according to KO, it was sort of close for the early hot first half, and then it said you tattooed him. Mike Tyson called it one of the best boxing exhibitions we've seen in years.
Well, I knew by watching him fight that after 5 or 6 rounds, he steps on the gas. So when he steps on the gas, you got to be able to step on the gas twice as hard. So if he goes to 10, you got to go to 15. If you don't go to 15, you're in trouble.
You were unbeaten through 92, including a title defense over Patricio Olivia in Italy. Did you like Italy?
For the first week. Then the last week I had to get my weight down, and there was no English television. I was losing my mind.
Did Al go with you?
Oh yeah. His family's from Naples.
That was my next question. Did he know loads of important Italian people?
Yeah, but not over there. They were all in New Jersey.
By the way, at the time, you seem to have given up on fighting Meldrick again. You said, I'll never like Meldrick until the day I die. You said he walks and talks like he's got a chip on his shoulder because he's got a gold medal, because he's a gold medal winner. The world's got to kiss his butt. The world owes him nothing. He talked about my heart falling into my pants. I'll show him in the next fight what's in my pants.
Well, it was close to the rematch. And the deal got blown out of the water.
Would you rather have had the Taylor rematch or a Chavez fight?
The Taylor rematch.
Did you ever patch things up with Meldrick?
Oh, yeah, we cool now. He texted me about 4 months ago.
Okay. How long did it take for that rivalry to soften? Because what I said,
to be honest with you, after the fight didn't happen, I was okay with it.
Okay.
I mean, after the rematch didn't happen, I was okay with it. It didn't bother me.
We talked about Don King a couple of times there. What was the relationship like with Don?
I mean, listen, when I fought, the only time I dealt with Don was when I fought Simon Brown. After that, I didn't have nothing. I didn't do no business with him until I started working for him.
And what was it like then when you were working for Don?
It was good. It was, how can I put it? It was an experience.
Any wild Don King stories?
Not really. Nah, not really. Nah.
Did he ever lose his temper with you?
No.
Did you ever lose yours with him?
No. I'll tell you one thing that happened. We were sitting down one day, and I was training one of his fighters who had a bad drug problem, and they asked me to go get the fighter and bring him to Florida. So I got the fighter, I brought him to Florida, and we're sitting in Don's office. And Don comes in. It was like a week before Christmas. I'll never forget. So Don's like, buddy, I want to thank you. I really like you, and I'm going to give you a nice Christmas gift. He went in his sock. He pulled out 4,000 cash. And he put it down on the table and slid it to me. So I put my hand on top of his hand. I said, now you're giving me this, correct? He goes, yeah. So I took the $4,000, put it in my pocket. So we go through the whole thing for like an hour and a half, him and the fighter going back and forth. So as I'm leaving, one of his assistants comes over and goes, buddy, you got to sign this check for $4,000. So I'm not signing that check. She's like, why not? I said, because he gave me that $4,000. So why would I sign that check if he gave me the $4,000? I said, now I'll sign that check if you give me another $4,000. I'll sign that check. I said, but this $4,000 is staying in my pocket, and that check is not going to be signed. He just looked at me and started laughing. Like, man, come on. If I sign that check, that's like you gave me 4,000. So now I owe you 4,000. I mean, you lent me 4,000. No, I'm no fucking idiot. I'm keeping this 4 grand in my pocket, and you can keep that check. Now, I said, now if you give me another 4,000 with that check, I'll sign it.
That's great. By the way, just going back to Meldrick, when you said you don't recall anything, at the time you said that some doctor's medication had made you drowsy. Is that something that means that, do you think that might have contributed to you not remembering it?
Between that and the punches he hit me with.
Okay, I like it. I like it. By the way, obviously at this point, when you're the champ, I was just reading yesterday, a lot of magazines were saying you versus Chavez was Don King's crown jewel fight. Saying that it would be the first welterweight fight since Hearns Leonard that would see two fighters earn $1 million each. So it would have been huge business.
Yes. But unfortunately, it didn't come off, for whatever reason. But I look at it like this. It wasn't meant to be.
Sure. A couple of fights later, you fought Pernell, Whitaker, the late, great Pernell. Again, like you were having shoulder issues. Al Serto took flack later saying he shouldn't have let you fight because you were injured. And you later said you let pride get the best of you and you went through with the fight when perhaps you shouldn't have. Years now in reflection, how would you stand on that first fight?
Well, how can I put it? I think the fight should have been a draw. That's number one. Number two, after the fight, I found out a lot of things about my injury that everyone knew but me, that how bad my shoulder was, including Al. The doctors had told him how bad my shoulder was, but they kept it away from me. They didn't want me. From what I was told, the doctors said to him, "Listen, he'll never fight again. So get that payday, and that's it." And they never thought I'd fight again. They never thought I'd come back.
After that fight, I mean, I think this is where I got one of the interviews with Al. Al said if he knew the extent of the injury, he wouldn't have let you fight. But obviously, with what you said, he might well have known.
He knew. Trust me, he knew. The truth came out after the fight. As a matter of fact, years later, the truth came out because I had a lawsuit. She had a lawsuit, and the doctors revealed that Al knew.
Okay.
So
Al also said in that same interview that Pernell Whitaker was just overrated and a hype job and just that he wasn't that great. Do you think Al changed his mind on that over the years?
I really don't know. You know what I mean? I really can't say that. I really can't say that. I don't think a lot of people realize how good Pernell is until you're in the ring with him.
Yeah, of course. And then, but at the same time, so there was this from Dan Duver. Dan Duver said you were overrated and a creation of the New York media. Do you remember him saying that?
No.
What do you think of that?
I mean, listen, there were rivals. I think it was more rivalry between the Duvers and Al Serto than it was between me and the fighters.
Okay. I found this section of the stuff with Al really interesting. Obviously, we talked about the boxers and the celebrities he knew. There was obviously a load of gangster stuff as well. And Sammy the Bull Gravano testified that Al was linked to the Genovese and the Gambino crime families. Gravano said the Gambino family owned an interest in you through, is it Jojo Carrozza? Carrozza. What, is that true?
No.
Would you tell me if
they didn't like Al. They didn't like Al at all. I was with a guy named, what the hell was his name? He got killed in New Jersey. I can't think of his name right now, but the John Gotti and them, they hated Al. They didn't like Al. You see, Jojo and John Gotti were friends with my manager, Stewie. But Stewie had a Jewish last name. See, when Stewie was born, his father was Italian, but the father told the mother, "We're going to give the kids your last name, not the Italian last name." So Stewie's last name was Wiener. So if you're a Fed looking for a Mafia guy, you're not going to fuck with a guy named Wiener. People are like, "Oh, he's straight laced." You're going to go with a guy named Serto. And Al was known for doing business with a mob guy in New Jersey who wound up dead in 1988. So Jojo and them really didn't like Al. They did no business with Al at all. So it had nothing to do with them. I don't know what, only God knows why Sammy said that, but it messed up a lot with it hurt my career a lot because I had to go before the Senate. It was just a whole lot of bullshit. And at the end of the day, it's like, yo, these guys have whatever deal they had with my managers, I don't know. Ain't got nothing to do with me. No one ever took a dime from me. Whatever deal they had with them, I don't know, never wanted to know. It's none of my business. You know what I mean? So one time a Fed came to the gym. This FBI agent was two of them, a man and a woman. They came to the gym and they said to me, buddy, why haven't you been to John Gotti's trial? And I said, I'm champ now. I don't need that type of publicity. I don't need that. But they said, well, I said, why are you guys coming at me like this? What's happening? And they said, well, we're going to give it to you straight. Has anybody ever asked you to take a dive in a fight? I'm like, what? I'm like, you guys watch too many goddamn movies, man. And they kept coming around until the trial was over. The feds were at my gym at least twice a week until the trial was over.
Did you know Sammy the Bull?
Yeah. We had the same trainer, Hector Roca.
How's he? How's Sammy?
Sammy was cool. I mean, Sammy used to train like 7, 8 in the morning. And I had to get to the gym at 10. So when I got to the gym, Sammy would be leaving. But would always say, at first, I didn't know who he was. And then one day we went to dinner, me and my manager, Stu, we went to dinner with John Gotti. And we had dinner. And I said, hold up, man. I pounded at Sam. I said, yo, aren't you the guy from the gym? He's like, yeah. And so I just knew him as Sammy. They're like, nah, but that's Sammy the Bull. I had no clue.
And he was a hitman, right?
Yeah, that's what they say. I never seen him kill nobody, so I don't know. And
you said there that you were at dinner with John Gotti. Did you know John then?
Oh, yeah. He loved boxing. He was a boxing fanatic, man.
Yeah, I've seen him. Remember seeing him announce ringside at some Tyson fights back in the day.
Right.
What was John like then?
Nice guy, man. They're all cool, man. I mean, listen, whatever they did at night or during the day had nothing to do with me. All I can tell you is they ate in fine restaurants. They knew how to pick good food.
Did you like that kind of gangster lifestyle? Because they live well and they're.
Listen, the only lifestyle I had with them was going to those fancy restaurants. Anything else outside of that, nothing.
I find this
dinner and a smile, and that was it.
Great stuff. By the way, Al said that you were a ladies' man, and he said he talked to you about the risk of AIDS. His daughter had died of AIDS, and he said that was his biggest concern. Biggest concern was you getting AIDS. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, but I mean, I wasn't worried. You know what I mean? I wasn't worried about that. I lost a family member to AIDS from drugs. So I know what it can do to you. You know what I mean? Huh?
Were you a ladies' man?
When I was younger, yeah. When I was younger.
How good was Livingston Bramble, who you beat in '94?
Very experienced. A lot of experience. I didn't give him a chance to hit me. I boxed the shit out of him.
And then you won a split decision over Pat Coleman, and then went back in with Pernell. What was different the second time round? Because you agree that the first fight was close, the second fight not so much.
I was just there to be there. After the Pat Coleman fight, I didn't want to fight anymore. All the fire left me right after that fight.
After the Pat Coleman fight?
Yeah, my wife told me, she said, well, then why are you going to fight? I said, we got bills to pay. But the fire was gone.
But you still had to clock in and clock out to get the money.
Yeah, but the fire was gone. I mean, I had no desire to fight anymore at that point in time.
Do you have any funny stories of your fight with Buck Smith?
Yeah, when we was in the clinch, and he said, buddy, it's going to be a long night because you can't hurt me. And I said to myself, you're right, kid.
And he wound up having a couple of hundred fights, didn't he, Buck?
Yeah.
Then came Joe Gatti. Was Arturo around at the time? Was he on the scene?
He was at the fight.
And you stopped Joe in, I think, 6 rounds. But do you remember meeting Arturo back then?
Oh yeah, I knew Arturo.
Okay.
I knew him before. I mean, you know, I met him when they first. See, there's a guy named Mario Costa who has who's good friends with Tyson. He's good friends with you know, he brought Gatti and them over here. So I used to always see them at Mario's place. He had a place called Ringside.
Okay,
He
yes.
still has it.
I had the gym there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know, I knew all those guys, man. I've known Mario since I was 18 years old.
What
So
happened in the fight with Andrew Council?
I was just there to be there. I didn't belong fighting that middleweight.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I mean, that was, you know, it was just too big.
And then came your last fight against Darren Machiniski, who I went and interviewed a while back. Actually, he'd just beaten Meldrick as well. Did that tell you that it was time to get out, losing to Darren?
Without a doubt, he used to be my sparring partner.
And I read this, which I didn't know, but Al was in his corner, right?
Yeah.
So what
He used
happened?
to be,
Had you and Al fallen out?
yeah. He used to be my sparring partner. So I said to myself, if I lose to him, it don't make no sense to fight anymore.
And then I remember you've told me before that when you decided enough was enough, you were flying out to Colorado Springs, were you? For
I was in Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Training for a fight. And when I got up to go running that morning, I was gone. So I just said, that's it for me. I'm done.
You say that matter of factly. Was that heartbreaking, the realization that it was over?
Yeah. Hardest thing I've ever had to deal with in my life. The hardest.
In an old KO interview, you talked about cops with guns coming to repossess your car in front of your daughter. And you said that at one point you lost so much weight that people thought you had AIDS and you were training fighters for $30 or $40. What took you down such a slippery path to get to there?
Taking care of everybody, family and friends. And then we wake up one day and everything's gone. And then I had a hyperthyroidism and didn't know it. And I used to sweat profusely. I couldn't gain any weight. I mean, and then it was like that for like 3 years until I went to in 2000. I almost, you know, I almost passed away. I went to I was working for Don King, and Don King made me go to the Cleveland Clinic in Fort Lauderdale, and they saved my life, man. Don King paid for everything. I mean, the doctor said that. I mean, when I would go take a leak, I was passing blood. Blood. It was just red, like, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" I mean, and I couldn't sleep. I was sweating crazy. And then when I called Don King's office, I'm like, "Hey man, I'm not feeling well." They said, "What's wrong?" So I told them, and they called me back 10 minutes. They says, "Go to the Cleveland Clinic in Fort Lauderdale. We'll take care of everything." So they called there and they sent them the bill, and I got to say, man, they saved my life.
Through the lows of the late 90s and that, you find out who your friends were. I know it's a cliche, but do people jump ship?
That's why you see me by myself now. They call me, "Hey champ, I need tickets to the fight." Or what motherfucker called Ticketron? Don't call me.
Don't they call Pat Lynch your current call?
You know what I mean? No, I didn't want them to call Pat, because if they call Pat, they're gonna ask Pat for a discount. Fuck them. Let them pay full price.
Oh man. So that period of your life, did you almost not come out of it? Were you depressed? Were you suicidal?
No, I wasn't depressed. I was searching. I wasn't depressed. I didn't have time to be depressed. I had a family I had to take care of, and they were dependent on me. So being depressed was not going to be the answer. What's going to be the answer was, yo, do what the fuck you got to do to make ends meet until you get where you need to be. And then I decided then, I got to get out of New York, go somewhere else, and make a fresh start. And I was working for Don King, and they paid for me to move to Florida, me and my wife and kids. And I got a fresh start. And I thank God every day for it, because I learned my lesson. So now when people call me for favors, I don't take nobody's phone calls. If I don't know you, or if I haven't heard from you since 1994, don't fucking call me now. Because when I needed help, I would call certain friends that I thought were my friends at the time, and they knew I was in a bad position. When I got done fighting, they'll say, "Yo, champ, let me call you back," and hang up. Motherfuckers won't call me back. I was like, wow. Family, my own family, my siblings, who I took care of. I put food on their table, kept roofs over their head, bought all their kids' clothes, took care of all of them. They laughed at me. So when I came to Florida and got blessed with another opportunity, now when they call me, yo, man, look, all you motherfuckers, excuse my language, lose my number. I don't care if you are my brother, my cousin, don't call me.
That makes sense.
Because in the 80s and 90s, I helped all of you. I took care of you, I took care of your families. Every job, every one of my nephews and siblings have in New York, every job that they have is because they related to me. Not because they're good workers. No, they related to Buddy McGirt. I got a nephew who has a criminal background. He called me about 4 months ago, and the guy who hired him says, "Buddy, is this your nephew?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I'm not supposed to give him the job, but I'm going to give him the job." And he gave my nephew the job. Not once did my nephew call me and say thank you.
At the same time, it's nice that your name still has that currency, that it means something to some people out there.
Back in Brentwood, man. Brentwood's my home. Always will be my home.
Obviously, we've sort of moved a little bit into the training area, which is great. I wanted to chuck some names at you. This one, 2-for-1, Paul Smith and Matthew Macklin. What do you think of those guys?
If Paul wasn't so damn lazy, he'd have been a great champion. But Paul would work hard, but then go eat McDonald's or something. Like, just couldn't help himself. But I love him, though. Paul's a great guy, man. I the whole family. Like, I know the whole family. They're a great family. I love them all, man. And I just wish them nothing but the best. Same with Matthew Macklin, a hard worker. You know what I mean? Matter of fact, Paul introduced me to Matthew. Hard worker and, very smart businessman. I hear he's doing pretty well for himself. I'm very happy for him.
But obviously, one of your sons, James Jr., boxed. Is that something you wanted, or did you not want him to get involved in boxing?
My son played college basketball, and then he stopped playing basketball on the side of the box. He thought it would be quicker than going to the NBA. And I tried to tell him, son, there's a lot of hard work in this business. And then he found out the hard way. But if he'd have listened to me and stayed in college, he'd have made it to the NBA. Without a doubt.
He had a good career, though.
Yeah, he did. He did. But he thought it was easy. And I said, son, you can't live harder than you train. See, my son, when he was a kid, he didn't see all the sacrificing I did to get to where I was. And by the time he was 10, I was already on my second world title. So he's like, shit, this is the life. But son, you don't know all the hard work I did, all the sacrificing I did to get here. He didn't see that because he was a baby. He didn't know. When he got of age to realize what was going on, he was like, shit, my dad's champ, this is it. But son, I put in a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, and it wasn't easy.
Who's the best fighter you've been in the opposite corner from as a trainer? You've worked the corners against Mayweather, against Tyson, against Canelo, most of the big names of the last 25 years.
I would have to say it would have to be between Floyd and Roy Jones.
Who did you have for Tarver? Of course.
Yeah. Even though Tarver beat him, Roy was dangerous at any time, man. We just, Tarver had his number. There's always that one guy that has your number. And Tarver had his number.
What about your old buddy Hopkins? I see you guys have gone back and forth over the years because obviously.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, Bernard is Bernard. I love Bernard, and it's funny. A friend of mine fought Bernard. Bernard's first pro fight. I was there.
Oh really? Okay.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah, yeah,
Was that a draw? Am I thinking?
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah, but Bernard, I love Bernard, man. You know, like, listen, man, all those guys from that era. I love all the fighters from any era. You know what I mean? But it was different back then. Mm.
Were you good pals with Nate Campbell?
Yeah, I trained Nate. And matter of fact, he called me about 2 weeks ago.
How's he doing?
I heard he's doing okay, you know, according to Nate, and everybody's doing fine.
Wasn't he a good chef?
He can cook chicken.
Okay. And you're not a fan of mitt work. Is that something that's still true today?
No, I still do. See, listen, I don't mind doing the mitts. I'm just not with all that fancy shit. If you're gonna use the mitts to teach a person something. Because all that fancy stuff is good, but there's only one problem. You don't fight like that. So why would you do that if you don't fight like that? What are you gonna learn? Like the guys do all that fancy stuff, that's okay. What did you just learn? Absolutely nothing. If you're gonna do the mitts or even the heavyweight, what did you learn today? That's the key. And a lot of people doesn't understand that. Some guys just let the fighters hit the bag. Okay, that's cool. But my question, okay, what did you learn today on hitting the heavyweight? If the guy says nothing, then somebody's not doing their job.
Sure. You didn't work with him for long, but what was Johnny Tapia like?
Love him. God bless him. Love him. Love him. Love him. Love him.
Do you remember?
He's great.
Do you remember training him in a really hot gym once?
In his garage, he forgot to turn the AC on. So my pride says, don't say anything. And his pride said, don't say anything. But then Teresa walked in and she goes, are you two guys crazy? You know what I mean? Because it was like 110 outside. We were in the garage. And we're going on the mitts. We're looking at each other like, I'm not saying nothing. He's looking at me like, I'm not going to say nothing. And we're doing the mitts, and we both look like we're about to pass out. And Teresa walked in, and she was like, oh, my God, what's wrong with you guys? And we both looked at her like, shit, I'm glad you came in here.
What about
Hey, listen, I don't mean to cut it short, but I got to get ready. My daughter has a soccer game today.
Great. Thanks, buddy. Loving it, man.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.